Before we start our study today, I'm going to go ahead and pray for us. That's okay. Lord, we thank you for today. We ask that you would be in the midst of our conversation and that you would open our hearts and our ears and our minds to hear whatever it is that you have for us today. Guide the study. Give me the words from you. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. So I'm going to pass out a paper. And while I'm doing that, I want you guys to be thinking of a way that you have either received or seen someone display kindness this week. So be thinking about that as we go ahead and just pass the paper. And if you stay on the page that just has a little paragraph, if it starts off with "I said." So we'll look at that. Has anybody come up with a way that they have experienced or received kindness this week?
I got a harebrained idea that since it's the one weekend off that we had from dance, that I would paint our guest bedroom and then throw up a Hail Mary to a couple people. And I didn't have help yesterday and we were done by 1. It was delightful.
So
So people dropped what they were doing on Saturday. Just came over, just practically helped us paint the bedroom.
Anyone else seen or received kindness this week?
My daughter took me out for dinner last night.
Oh.
Which daughter? The oldest one, August. It was like cashing in a birthday gift. But it was a great gift. And it was kind of her to do.
My mother-in-law got up early this morning and made cinnamon rolls for us.
And they were bomb diggity. Right down there, bomb diggity.
My handwriting is not the greatest, but
That's really good. I would have never known.
I'm not. Anybody else want to share?
Yeah, my father-in-law actually, he, on a drop of a dime, he moved a bunch of dirt for me. I put in a flower bed and he helped unload my entire truck. Analysis with a simple phone call. Pretty cool.
That is.
Yeah, I asked to borrow a wheelbarrow and he came and unloaded the truck.
Now we're going to go ahead and if I can get a volunteer to go read where it starts with Hesed, which is, by the way, Hebrew for kindness. And since we're going to be looking at a text from the Old Testament, went with the original Hebrew language.
I'll read it. Thank you. An important word to study in this unit is Hesed, kindness, in 2 Samuel 9:1, which is associated with goodness, loving kindness, mercy, and faithfulness or loyalty. Hesed has been said to be practiced in an ethically binding relationship of relatives, hosts, allies, and obligations, real or implied. A relationship is always present. Love almost necessitates a subject-object relation, but the Hesed is always given freely. Freedom of decision is essential. The help is vital. Someone is in a position to help. The helper does so in his one freedom, and this is the central feature in all the texts. Throughout the Old Testament, kindness is also interchanged with loving kindness.
Thank you. Now, I will need everyone's participation to turn the paper over. The scripture that we're going to be looking at is 2 Samuel 9. So if we can take turns, if you just want to read a verse or two and then let someone else pick up until we complete it, we'll start there. So whoever wants to start.
Is there anyone still left at the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake? Now there was a servant of Saul's household named Ziba. They summoned him to appear before David, and the king said to him, Are you Zion? At your service, he replied. The king asked, is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness? Zion answered the king, there is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame in both feet.
Where is he? The king asked. Zion answered, he is at the house of Machir, son of Ammiel, in Lo-debar. So King David had him brought from Lo-debar from the house of Machir, son of Ammiel. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, Mephibosheth, at your service, he replied.
Don't be afraid, David said to him, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore you to all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table. I'm going to pass it to you on that line. I do not.
So he bowed down and said, what is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me? Then the king summoned Saul's steward and said to him, I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family.
You and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for him and bring in the crops so that your master's grandson may be provided for. And Mephibosheth, grandson of your master, will always eat at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, your servant will do whatever my lord the king commands his servant to do. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons.
He had a young son named Micah, and all the members of Ziba's households were servants of Mephibosheth. And Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem because he always ate at the king's table. He was lame in both feet.
Now, we're going to listen to that again. And while you're listening, be thinking of a word that describes each of the main characters, which would be Ziba, Mephibosheth, and David. Try to come up with what might they be feeling while they are having this dialogue. And you can write it on the paper there.
David asked, is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?
Now there was a servant of Saul's household named Ziba. They summoned him to appear before David, and the king said to him,
Are you Ziba? At your service,
he replied. The king asked,
is there no one still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness?
Ziba answered the king,
There is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame in both feet. Where is he?
The king asked. Ziba answered,
He is at the house of Machir, son of Ammiel in Lo-debar.
So King David had him brought from the house of Machir, son of Ammiel. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said,
Mephibosheth, at your service,
he replied.
Don't be afraid,
David said to him,
I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table.
Mephibosheth bowed down and said,
What is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me?
Then the king summoned Ziba, Saul's steward, and said to him,
I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. You and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for him and bring in the crops so that your master's grandson may be provided for. And Mephibosheth, grandson of your master, will always eat at my table.
Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king,
Your servant will do whatever my lord the king commands his servant.
So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son named Micah, and all the members of Ziba's household were servants of Mephibosheth. And Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem because he always ate at the king's table. He was lame in both feet.
Were you able to think of any feelings that you think the characters were feeling at that time.
I see David feeling loyal to his friend, just in the act that he did for his family.
Mephibosheth, he was surprised.
Compassion came to him for David.
Any other feelings that you think they might have been feeling? Or what about Ziba? Any?
That's a weird one, isn't it? Because in some respects, I wonder if Ziba was like, I had a sweet gig. I wasn't forced to serve anyone. And now, a lame kid who I don't really know, I would assume, is now into the picture. And I now, and my family, have to serve him.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, maybe.
Did he get job security or did he lose
Right.
autonomy?
And what do you been thinking?
Our Bible study teacher will tell us.
She knows. She knows exactly how it felt.
This is discovery. No, so what would you, how would you label? Okay.
I don't know.
Where's
Perplexed. I'm not sure he was though. I don't know. I wonder if he was grateful, or if he was frustrated, or like I don't know.
Yeah, we're just seeing like what does it sound like they would be feeling in that moment.
I mean, at the same time, Mephibosheth, he was probably a little like wary, like, okay, what's the catch? Like, what's the catch? You're being nice, but out of nowhere, like
Eating at my table,
know what I'm
what I
saying?
gotta give to you.
I'm laying both feet. What are you coming at?
I think he even felt unworthy too, because he's like, "Who are you that you should notice a dead dog like me?"
Yeah, so, I mean, what's going on?
Well, I wonder what his facial expression was that David's response is "Don't be afraid." He was giving off some kind of facial clue that he was
You're so afraid.
either afraid or uncertain.
Wonder if he knows the family history. Yeah,
He should be afraid.
If he's gonna get revenge.
That's right.
And almost fear,
Because this is Saul's grandson,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which means it's the king of the previous. Go ahead.
Anyone else have any other feelings they think that are not up here that they'd like to share?
I wonder if David felt this sense of needing to repay a debt for Jonathan's kindness.
It's like obligation.
Almost.
Or was it a desire?
Yeah, not necessarily obligation, but this
Opportunity.
deep, like, because he kept saying, "Is there anyone that I can show this kindness to?" So I don't know if the obligation or just this deep need for his own peace in his soul to pass that on. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you say it like that, it almost don't seem genuine. Like I just said, somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, I gotta do this.
So what we're going to do now is look at David's story and what motivated him to feel like he needed to show this kindness.
David? Jonathan! Are you all right? Yes. Just confused. Jonathan, what have I done? Why is your father so determined to kill me?
That can't be true. I'm sure he's not planning any such thing.
Well, the fact that I'm here proves that he is.
No! He always tells me everything he's going to do. He'd never hide something like this from me.
Jonathan, your father knows we are friends. He doesn't want you to be hurt. But the truth is, I'm only one step away from death.
What do you want me to do?
Tomorrow is the beginning of the New Moon Festival. I've always been with your father for the feast, but this time I'll hide in the field until the evening of the third day.
And what good will that do?
Well, if your father asks where I am, tell him I've gone to Bethlehem for a family reunion. If he gets upset, then that will be proof that he is planning to kill me.
And if he doesn't get upset?
Then I'll know all is well. Will you do this for me as my sworn brother?
David, please, if you would just listen.
Or else kill me if you think I sinned against your father. Just don't betray me to him.
David, I would never do that. Give me your hand. I I swear by the Lord God of Israel that I will tell you my father's plans. If he wants you killed, then may the Lord kill me if I don't tell you, so you can escape and live.
Thank you, Jonathan. David, I know that you are to be king.
May the Lord be with you, as he used to be with my father. I just ask one thing.
Name it.
Remember to demonstrate the love and kindness of the Lord not only to me during my lifetime, but to my children after the Lord has destroyed all your enemies.
May I be cursed forever if I do not.
No, do not swear by curses. Swear by your love for me as a true friend. Upon my life, and by my love for you as my true friend, I swear it. Thank you, my friend. Now, here's what we'll do. Hide yourself behind that boulder. I'll come out and shoot 3 arrows in front of it as though I'm shooting at a target. Then I'll send a lad to gather the arrows. If you hear me tell him they're on this side of the boulder, then you'll know all is well, there is no trouble. But if I tell him go farther, the arrows are still beyond you, then you must leave immediately. Understood? Understood. Good. May the Lord make us keep our promises to each other, for he is also witness.
Jonathan was certain that his father would welcome David back with open arms, but nothing could be further from the truth. Saul was so filled with hatred for David, he nearly killed Jonathan. Jonathan now knew that what David told him was true. The king wanted him dead. Jonathan took his bow and arrow and a lad into the field. He shot the arrows, then sadly called out to the lad,
Go farther! The arrows are still beyond you.
David was heartbroken. When the lad went back into the city, the two friends pledged friendship for life, said their farewells, and parted, grief-stricken. They never saw each other again.
So that was the story of David and Jonathan's relationship, and now we kind of see maybe what motivated him. So can some of you put a name to his motivation to give kindness at this time, now knowing the story between Mephibosheth's father and David?
Gratitude.
Fulfillment of a promise.
That's love.
Anything else? So, in hearing the story, also, what did Jonathan give up for David?
He was the heir. He gave up his position as king.
Anything else he gave up?
I think he definitely risked losing any trust his father had in him if he was found out that he was helping David.
So now we're going to look to see how far David took the kindness that he extended to Mephibosheth. And we're going to do that with 2 readings. We're going to read from 2 Samuel 16, 1 through 4. If I can get a volunteer to read that little section for me, I have it here. And then I'm going to summarize 2 Samuel 21, 7, and then we'll discuss and see what all did he do to extend that kindness. Any volunteer for 2 Samuel 16, 1 to 4.
I don't want to read out loud. Someone else wants to do it. They're all looking at me, but they don't want to do it.
So 16, 1 to 4. Thank you so much.
Could you print be any smaller?
Do we have hold it over here? Do you want some glasses?
Maybe a little more lessons on kindness. I'm doing 16, 1 to what?
1 to 4.
Oh, just short.
1 through 4.
When David had gone a short distance beyond the summit, there was Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, waiting to meet him. He had a string of donkeys saddled and loaded with 200 loaves of bread, and hundreds of cakes of raisins, and hundreds of cakes of figs, and a skin of wine. And the king asked Ziba, "Why have you brought these?" Ziba answered, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on. The bread and the fruit are for the men to eat, and the wine is to refresh those who become exhausted in the desert." The king then asked, "Where is your master's grandson?" Ziba said to him, "He is staying in Jerusalem because he thinks today the house of Israel will give him back my grandfather's kingdom." Then the king said to Ziba, "All that belongs to Mephibosheth is now yours. I humbly bow," Ziba said. May I find favor in your eyes, my lord the king."
Now we have a little different kindness. Let's remember the first story. Now we hear what's happened and how they responded to each other. And then I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to summarize 2 Samuel 21 through 7. When Saul was alive, he had put the Gibeonites to death, so the Lord created a famine for 3 years. So David summoned the Gibeonites, who had been able to escape Saul, to find out what he could do for them to make amends so that they will bless the Lord's inheritance. The Gibeonites replied with asking to have 7 of Saul's male descendants to be given to them to be killed and exposed before the Lord. David agreed, but spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, because of the oath he made to Jonathan. So, do you notice any contrast or conflicting things happening with this kindness? Anything odd or we can start at the beginning, and how did he initially show kindness?
Am I hearing that correct? That the Gibeonites, their response to Saul was that David needed to send 7 of Saul's descendants to be executed? Did I read that? Did I hear that?
Saul had basically killed all of them when he was alive. So because of that, the Gibeonites who did escape and were alive, to make the famine go away, asked David to kill 7 of Saul's descendants.
And Mephibosheth
Yes.
was not killed because of his sickness, because of his legs, just because.
He was Jonathan's son.
David spared him. Okay, so he wasn't necessarily one of. Okay.
So we started out the story. What did David do? The very 2 Samuel 9.
Provided for Mr. M.
You almost have to have a list to be able to say that word.
Yeah. And then, what else does he do to show kindness between the 3 stories?
Took care of all the farming for him.
And in the last story, what did the Gibeonites ask happen?
Payback, basically.
Mm-hmm. But he did what? So he spared his life. Was there anything that conflicted between him providing for Mephibosheth at the beginning and then in between sparing his life? Why did he have to spare his life at this time? what happened? Was there anything different from the kindness that he was initially set out to show him? Then he does something. What does he do then to Mephibosheth? When Ziba met him in the field, Mephibosheth didn't show up, and David.
It seemed like he granted a lot of power to Ziba. It seemed like he gave a lot of power or authority to.
Sounds like he took his land away. Like you have everything
Right.
that Mephibosheth had. So he gave it to him, took it away from him, and then he still spared his life. That's his. Didn't give him back his land, but does that? You see the little? He's still trying to show kindness.
Maybe, I wonder if Mephibosheth still needed it. Like he was now in Jerusalem, eating at David's table. So, I don't know, maybe just functionally he didn't need it anymore. Or maybe he was taking something, I don't know all the stories, but.
He didn't need what? The kindness anymore?
Land.
Oh, the land.
Yeah, he didn't.
Oh.
Because he's now in Jerusalem, he doesn't need that.
Well, it said in the first story, said he ate at the king's table every day.
Right.
He inhabited Jerusalem, so maybe that was all a transfer to continue to help the overall. A lot of culture here, I don't know.
Could it also have been a way to show kindness to Ziba taking care of him for so long, for doing a good job taking care of him? Could it be almost like a reward to him?
Let's So we remember he said, all that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours. So it sounds like he completely stripped him of what he had granted him.
Was he getting greedy?
He didn't show up. Ziba did. We noticed that.
But it sounds almost like he's getting greedy, right? He said he thinks he's gonna get everything, my whole grandfather's kingdom.
So we see they've changed a little along the way, the story, and even David's response to him has changed. And it could be because of Mephibosheth's response for you to not show up and to think that I'm going to take what I did give you. But then again, a year or two later, I'm going to save your life. So just going to pay attention to the little changes that are happening. And now we're going to, is there anything that you noticed or that stood out to you about the way Ziba and Mephibosheth respond to David in our text for today, 2 Samuel 9? How did they both respond the same way? What do you notice anything about the way Ziba and Mephibosheth respond to David? How would you describe that when he addresses them?
When you fall, when you submit to it, they're submissive at your service. They both say that, don't they?
He once is your servant.
We don't know if that, we can't tell completely if it's out of fear or respect.
Obedient.
Subservient.
Anything else stick out about the way they respond? So now we're going to look at why members of Saul's family might respond to David with, if they are fearful. We'll look and read together in small groups. I'm going to give you stories from 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel about what's happened to David's family, and then you guys can respond on the sheet of paper. We're going to spend about 5 minutes if you want to group up, however you, I guess it's perfect.
Groups of two?
Yeah, groups of two will work. And then I'll give you the questions or things to be thinking about as you are reading. You just want to jot them down as little notes. So what I want you to be looking for is anything suspicious. Maybe about David's behavior or his whereabouts or anything that sounds like it could be a little sketchy. Also, if there's any possibilities for any ulterior motives or personal gain for anyone in that story. And what happens to Saul's family members?
Are we doing both texts or just
You guys are doing two because the other ones are really long. So
Oh, sure. Fair.
The other ones are okay.
Whatever.
I'll try to write them up here so you can revert back to what the questions are. Anything suspicious? Any possibility for ulterior motives? Or what happens to Saul's family members in the particular story? Which one do you have? Abner?
Yeah.
Abner.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I couldn't.
Oh, David's their enemies. Yeah.
Does everybody have at least an answer or two that they need a few more minutes? Okay. Okay, so any story can go ahead and throw out there. Anything suspicious, either about David or other characters, ulterior motives, possibly even on David's part? Could he have been doing something, but for his own personal gain or anything like that? And then what happened to Saul's family members in each of the stories? Anyone can start.
Our story, they're not random, but they seem random to us. People kill one of Saul's descendants and cut off the head and take it to David, thinking they're doing David a favor. He's your enemy, so he killed one of his descendants. And David gets super angry at them and saying, when people brought news of Saul's death, I killed them. And now when these people say, you killed an innocent man in his own bed, I'm going to kill you. So he kills these people that thought they were doing David a favor. So it still seems like he has this weird, for me weird, David has this still weird respect for Saul even though he's his enemy. And is still looking out for him. So it seemed like these other people had an ulterior motive of getting good with David. He responds with violence against them.
So that's to Saul's family, or to
one of the descendants of Saul's family was killed by these other Rebecca and Rechab. Yeah.
So Saul's family members were murdered?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And David punished them.
Executed.
Permanent punishment.
Yeah, the thing that's bothering me about that, and even the Gibeonite one, is that David's promise to Jonathan had nothing to do with anything above Jonathan. Right? Because he promised it was Jonathan and his descendants. Which means he shouldn't have done that because that wasn't his promise, unless there's something else that we don't know about. You know. But then why would he honor the Gibeonite thing? That, right? He shouldn't have.
He still has a deep loyalty to Saul, even though it's almost like an abusive relationship, right? Like,
but then why would he do it to the
people
Gibeonites?
keep going back.
The
So
warring
it's a
thing.
weird, he has, like you said, a weird loyalty kind of that. How would you describe that, or what you're saying? Is there any, like, would you say who has the ulterior motive in that? Is there one? Or is it just weird?
Well, let's hear from the other stories and see if anything is.
David, he doesn't respect Saul. Basically, what I got in this story is that he respects the fact that he was anointed, but he doesn't like him. But he was like, well, he's the Lord's anointed, so I would respect his position, but I don't like him.
So, was there anything suspicious about his behavior or whereabouts, depending on what story you have? Was he somewhere that he shouldn't have been, or should he have been somewhere and he wasn't there? Did something look just really convenient for him or inconvenient? Was there a possibility that this is what happened, but maybe he's really playing at something else?
I mean, he just got done striking down the Amalekites in this story. So he just got done killing somebody. So.
And then what happens?
He just got done killing somebody. So.
And then what happens?
And then, do they even give him a name? No, there's some guy.
No,
Yeah, Amalekite showed up. Hey, Saul's dead. And they was like, how do you know? He was like, I killed him. Okay, so you're an Amalekite who just got done killing anyway. And you killed David, who I'm showing respect for. So, I mean, and you killed Saul, so I got to kill you anyway, and kill him. So, yeah,
It's a similar story too.
But David is a warrior, and he wasn't there at the battle?
No.
Is that suspicious? That you are a warrior. Why didn't you know that Saul was dead? Because you were there in battle.
I mean, he was too busy wiping out another group of people. So. Yeah, too busy wiping out somebody else. So.
Okay. Any other suspicious or ulterior motives? And, again, Saul's family, Saul himself, died?
And Jonathan is also.
Yeah, Jonathan.
Okay. So we'll do murder times two.
You can do times 3 on the murder thing in our story.
Oh, so, okay.
More people.
He murdered everybody.
Yeah. I tried to draw something, but I'm not a good artist, so I couldn't draw this. But, so we had Abner, who is somewhere a descendant of Saul, who's there again in battle somewhere, and it doesn't say quite where. But he came to tell David that they had prepared a feast for him and his men. And so he let them know that they were going ahead of them to prepare this feast. And Joab, who does not like Abner because he had killed their brother in the Battle of Gibeon, gets all upset. So suspicious would be Joab getting really upset that Abner had already left the area. And he sends someone after him to kind of bring him back under false pretenses so that he can then turn around and off him, stab him.
Is there anything in that would be suspicious? Also, if David is king, he's in control, and then you make peace with him, and one of your servants goes and then kills him.
Yes, as if David curses the servant's family that they may never be without someone who has a running sore or leprosy, or who leans on a crutch, or falls by the sword, or lacks food. Like he puts a curse on their family. But that, as James was talking about, it's like, okay, again, that seems like this really odd, almost defense of Saul in his lineage.
Yeah, hold on. Are you telling me that David cursed
the guy who
family
killed
of Saul?
No, David cursed the family, the family who killed Abner, who was a descendant of Saul. Because someone killed Abner after he was all good with Abner.
I was trying to figure out if David's curse ended up making Mephibosheth lame.
No, that's
It's a different family.
No, so David had sent Abner away in peace, and this other guy who's under David in the hierarchy of fighting goes after, brings him back, and then offs him to get revenge.
This is making. I've wondered for a while whether or not we as God's people have bred David into a hero status when we really shouldn't have. Right? And this would be just more fodder for me. Ours is a weird story, like everyone else's. Commonality. You have one up there for commonality. Weird stories.
You guys do times 3 though.
No, this one there was no murder.
Oh.
No. Okay, so
where he shouldn't be.
yes. So in this one, David is with the Philistine army, and the head of the Philistine, whatever, a dude, basically is commending David. Is this not David, who was an officer of King Saul of Israel? He has already been with me for over a year, which means David has been with the Philistine army for a year.
A little slow in finding him.
And I found no fault with him, which means he has been collaborating with the Philistines.
Who knows life was that?
This is in 1 Samuel 29, so this would have been the end of...
This is before Saul's dead.
So that's when he was still running from Saul.
Yeah,
so he was like hiding out.
Send him back.
No, he's not...
Send him back.
Could even could that have been a hiding
This is
place?
post-Goliath, obviously. And then they reference that Saul has slain his thousands, but David has slain his 10,000s.
So this is when he was still working. He was still safe with Saul.
Oh, okay.
At this point.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, okay, so suspicious, why is he with the Philistine army?
And someone has a suspicion of him in that story, right?
Yes, they do. The other Philistines.
The commander, the Philistine commanders.
Okay.
They don't give us a name. So then they send him back.
Alternative motives could be, why is he with the Philistines? What does that give him in context of Saul? So I don't know that. Yeah. Nothing to Saul's family, except for they defame his name by putting David above Saul. Okay. And the other one is the dancing, David danced naked, and Michaela, the daughter of Saul, comes out, and Michal the king has distinguished himself today, dancing half naked in full view of the slave girls, as a vulgar fellow would. David gets pissed and curses her and says, "You'll have no children."
And she doesn't.
But who is she?
Saul's daughter.
But
Saul.
and who?
What's her name?
No, isn't she David's wife, or she's something close to David? She's a member of Saul's family.
Well, maybe.
Well, she's at his home
Yes, he comes home to bless his
because he
home.
comes home to bless his household.
Correct.
This text only calls her the daughter of Saul, but maybe.
Okay. So how does he treat her though? What does it sound like he's saying? You said he gets upset.
David says, "It was from the Lord.
Yeah.
You chose me rather than your father or anyone else in the household. When he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people, I will celebrate before the Lord, and I will become even more undignified in this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes."
Is that going to be an excuse for him to get rid of her?
I
She's
mean,
not
he says I'm going to
children for him.
Yeah, and he says he's going to even do worse things, right? I'm going to become even more undignified than this, is what he says to her as she tells him, why are you out doing that here? Is that, she's a member of Saul's family, doesn't kill her, she doesn't die, but does he respect her? Does it sound like he respects her from that text at all?
Well, she almost does die. If she's a woman that's not going to bear kids and have some kind of status and living down.
So, are you suggesting that
I don't think he's a good character.
he's got some issues?
Oh. Thank you.
Question? No, I don't have a question. Just wait.
Thank you.
You were supposed to dance.
Yeah,
Remember? I gave you the cue. You screwed up.
Okay, so with these stories and talking more than what you first saw, is there anything suspicious then of any of David's activities? Do you guys feel that maybe
everything?
there could be a flip side, I guess you could say, to almost anything that it could have been? It looked like you were doing the right thing, or you were so upset, but then where were you when it happened? It could be that maybe it's a show for something else. It could be.
He's crazy.
He could be very well crazy.
Dancing niggas in the streets, committing genocide.
Collaborating with the enemy.
He was doing good everything.
So, with this, and back to our kindness, can you think of, you don't necessarily have to share it, but take a few minutes, or a few seconds, to think about, has someone showed you kindness, and you were afraid to accept it, or have you shown kindness to someone, and maybe they questioned your intentions? Yeah, I'll have to share. Just think on that. Has that happened to you? Now, looking back on some of the moments that you guys shared earlier with the kindness you received, does the motives behind that gesture change the fact that it was kindness for you? If that person had their own personal gain out of it or anything like that, would that change the fact that they did a kind gesture for you? Or in any situation, does it change it if someone had an ill motive, but they still did something kind for you? Does that matter in any way?
Like it definitely would matter.
Oh yes, sometimes it definitely could matter.
Especially if there's strings attached.
Exactly.
But, so last night my daughter took me for dinner. Well, we went to a couple places that she loves to eat at, and I know that she loves to eat. So she was getting just as much out of it as I was. But that's what even made it more fun for me, is that I know she was thoroughly enjoying it. So she wasn't like, so there's kindness you can get when someone sacrifices for you. So the reason why she did it is she wanted to do something nice for me. And also she benefited from it. But, I mean, we got on date night. It's like, because you benefit from it doesn't, anyway, I'm not questioning her motive. And it wouldn't have mattered. She wanted to do something. So it didn't matter for me, but I did know it's something she loved to do. Which in this relationship, because it's relational, enhance the experience. But I could see where, I'm just using my example, I could see in other illustrations where receiving kindness or expressing kindness, the motivation definitely does play.
So if I can ask someone to close in prayer, and let's ask God, who is He calling us to show kindness to, or is there anything about the way that we express kindness, or at times that our motives are probably not clear, or if there's someone that we've tried to do something for, or someone who has questions about our motives, how can we respond to that, or how should we respond to that? Again, if there's anyone that maybe we need to, out of obligation for our love for the Lord, or out of obligation for a relationship, or just to do the right thing, is there anyone that we need to do that for? Would anybody like to close us in prayer?
Sure, I can do that. Creator, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be together, to learn and read and share and study. Thank you for Charmaine's leadership and guidance. I pray that you would continue to teach us the way of love. A love that is extravagant, that's generous, is without strings. I pray that you would reveal to us people that we need to be demonstrating and showing love and generosity to, kindness, that it might stretch beyond normal, conventional things, beyond what we gain by our kindness, to a kind of love that is modeled in who Jesus is, who he was as he walked this earth. That we might be people of love. Amen.
And a last final thought is that even if we've learned or thought of the motives, and if David really wasn't a great hero and there were some other things going on, that he was still considered a man after God's own heart. That gives us hope that is us, and there's still hope to be called a person after God's own heart. Thank you guys for listening.